USC won a classic last night, 48-45. I was on the sideline for this one at the Rose Bowl. It was not lost on me, a kid from West Central Georgia, what it means to stand on the field of the Rose Bowl. I'll talk about that more in a second. But I've never been able to watch Caleb Williams from field level, and now I have. And I get what the big deal is. It wasn't shocking. I've seen him on TV many, many times. But they are right. I've heard a few scouting types say, boy, the ball comes out of his hand different when you're standing on the field. And boy, you can so tell how much his subtle movement, sometimes in the pocket, buys just that little extra bit of time. And then when you combine it with the fact that he has a rocket attached to his body in the form of an arm, and he can thread needles in tight windows that most guys wouldn't even attempt to thread, he's an NFL quarterback. He just happens to be playing college football right now. Man, he's really good. He won this game last night for USC. No two ways about it. And remember, they come into this game without Travis Dye. And look, Austin Jones, running back, steps up. I mean, I'll talk about him in a second too. But Caleb Williams, I want you to think about how this game started. UCLA gets a 2-score lead. USC's been down in the red zone twice. They come away with 0 points. So that's the starting point. Like, that's when he really started to go to work. And after that, he went off. And at a certain point, I think it was Joel Klatt. I heard some of the broadcasts. I was going back and forth from the field to the media suite because there's free food in there. That's why. And I heard him say, hey, this is turning into one of those kinds of games where if you punt, you lose. And that ended up pretty much being the case. And Caleb Williams was up to the challenge. Look at these numbers. Career high there in total yards. 503 total yards accounted for. He had 470 through the air, 32 of 43. UCLA just couldn't do enough. And it's a situation where Dorian Thompson-Robinson had good enough numbers except one column, and that's the turnover column. But I don't think what some people realize is USC, like, they've got this ridiculous turnover margin this year, and you may think to yourself, they must be doing something right defensively. And you can credit the defense, but I credit Caleb Williams. I credit Lincoln Riley. I credit the offense, because what happened again last night is you got a team in UCLA into a situation where they knew they had to keep matching points. And even if you're conditioned to that, even if that is the kind of offense that you're comfortable running anyway, it gets uncomfortable when you know you've got to do just a little bit more. And over the span of 4 quarters and multiple possessions, if you can make someone press just a fraction more than they otherwise would be able to, if you make them operate on your terms instead of their terms, eventually what's going to happen is that guy will try and reach for a first down he otherwise wouldn't try and reach for. He'll try and throw a ball that he'd otherwise either tuck and run or throw it away and live to play another down. Why? Because there's pressure being put on him to match you. That's Caleb Williams. He's not on the field. He's not playing safety or corner or anything like that. But make no mistake, you see those turnovers, Caleb Williams and that offense are the primary culprits behind some of the opposition's turnovers. Now, here's the other thing that I want to talk about. We're way, way deep into this season now, and USC is going to play for a Pac-12 championship in year 1 under Lincoln Riley. All I can say about him is you may not like Lincoln Riley. You may not want to give Lincoln Riley credit. There are certainly different camps, and he's pretty polarizing. No one's indifferent on Lincoln Riley, but you've got to give him credit. You may not want to give Lincoln Riley credit, but you got to give him credit. This dude's essentially become college football's Ferdinand Magellan. You know, there were a lot of things that were often thought about this sport, kind of like before anyone circumnavigated the globe. There was a thought about what would happen if you fell off the end of the earth. Well, eventually, somebody had to test it out. And what do you know? I didn't get eaten by fire-breathing dragons once I fell off the end of this thing. I just went all the way around it. Voila! Put the globes in the classrooms. Well, Lincoln Riley and all of us for a long time heard that there's really only one way to put together a roster. And you got to recruit, and you got to build those relationships in 9th grade, 10th grade, then you got to foster them, then you got to bring them in, then you got to develop them, and that is tried and true, and it works. But as it turns out, some of the things that were largely accepted as fact out there were not fact when it comes to another way to put together a roster. They were merely theory. Consensus is only a theory until someone tested. Lincoln Riley tested it. Lincoln Riley tested the notion that you can't just go into the transfer portal and put together a team. That's not the way team building and roster construction works. It's not the way it has worked, friend, but it's absolutely working for him. Now, what I'm not suggesting, nor do I think he would suggest, is this is the way we're going to do it until the end of time. But what I am suggesting is he found a way in year one to not look at his administration and his fans and say, give me time, we're going to suck this year, give me time. He didn't do that. He said, if it's okay with everyone, can we try and win now? Can we win this year? Yeah, let's try and win this year. And they're winning this year. Anything they achieve from this point forward is overachievement in my mind. They don't think that way. I think that way about him. Here's what else is happening. Once Magellan did his thing, he wasn't the last. Once Roger Bannister ran that sub 4-minute mile, he wasn't the last. They were the first. Once Lincoln Riley portaled his way to a conference championship game in year one, he won't be the last. He'll be the first. What are we about to enter? We are entering what could be a pretty crazy hiring cycle. This cycle and cycles to come, you have the usual stuff to keep in mind. Who are we going to go get? Who are the OC and DC going to be? Recruiting coordinator? Who are we going to get in here? Strength and conditioning. But you also have that other elephant in the room, and that is how much of our new head coach's roster could be convinced to follow him here. How many of them don't need to be convinced? They'll voluntarily do it. How many kids on other rosters are going to see him come here and all of a sudden put two and two together and say, the confluence of that guy and that program is attractive enough for me, I'm on my way. Someone else is going to do it. Lincoln Riley is just the blueprint. He's just our Magellan. You don't have to like it. I don't know how liked or hated Magellan was, but I think that you will see begrudgingly a lot of people lean into this way of doing things. You'd be stupid not to. If you're making a change anyway, you'd be dumb not to. Mel Tucker did it last year. So now we have an argument. Now I'm going to have to put up the Twitter poll. College football Magellan. Are we looking at Mel Tucker or are we looking at Lincoln Riley? UCLA is a good team, man. Like, they played Arizona last week. I talked to a couple of their staffers on the field before the game, and I said, do you guys feel like Arizona played you as good as I do? And they said, yeah. Like, we thought we did enough to win. We thought we had them multiple times. And Jaden DeLora just said, no, you don't have us. That's the Arizona quarterback. And they just won. I didn't think less of UCLA after that. I don't think less of them after this game. They have 3 losses now. One of them was last night to a team that could go on to win the Pac-12 championship and go to the playoff. Another one is to Oregon, who could be the team that prevents USC, for all we know, from winning the Pac-12 and going to the playoff. And then the third one was against Arizona that just pulled a South Carolina, basically played out of their mind for one night. It's a good team. 8-3 right now. They go to Cal this week. I think UCLA will win that game. Model loves them this week. I think you're going to see a 9-win team this year, regular season. I think you're going to see a 9-win team, and that's a good year. As for the Rose Bowl, as I told you to start that segment, man, that's a special place. And I was fortunate that I got to see it at pretty full capacity last night. So it wasn't the Rose Bowl game, per se. It's a night game as opposed to a 2 p.m. local time kick, which the Rose Bowl is. But really special place. And if you know me or you listen to the show or have for any length of time, you know that the travel schedule we choose is not something that we ever just settle into. It doesn't become mundane. It doesn't become a box we just check. Like this stuff, we want to do it. We ask to do it, and we want to go on the road 15 or 16 weeks in a row. Some of them are more special than others only because if you're from where I'm from, in the rural South, the Rose Bowl, you know where it is, and you could point to it on a map, but it's just, it's another galaxy. It exists in another world. And especially if you're from a smaller town, the world can feel that way when you grow up. So I remember being a kid, and when I would see the Rose Bowl on TV, or when I would just see teams playing out west, it just felt so far away. And now that we've elevated the show to the point where we get to go to those places, yeah, it's wonderful. And maybe some people do take that stuff for granted. I don't take it for granted. It was a big deal. I got there early yesterday, number one, because of traffic. Number two, just to soak that in for a few extra minutes. That's not lost on me. So I wanted to tell you guys that because I talked to a number of you there yesterday and echoed that sentiment. So I kind of wanted to say that on the more broad scale here. Guys, thanks for watching Late Kick. Make sure and leave a comment. I love interacting with you. But most of all, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. That's how we keep all of this free.